Welcome today to this video, and we have with us today Paul Tetreault, and Paul and I are going to speak about partnerships that can be done between churches from across Canada with churches in Quebec or in Francophone Canada. Hi Paul, how are you doing?
Hi Gary, I'm doing great today.
Good. Paul, we often get people inquiring about how they can help in Quebec. They can't take a year or 3 years off their life, come here, learn French, go into one of our programs like Fit for M, but they still have a desire to see somehow the church in Quebec grow and continue to have success here in the province of Quebec or even in French churches across Canada. So a number of years ago, we established something called church-to-church partnerships, and you've been involved since almost the beginning of that in the early 2000s. And over the years, we've seen many churches, up to sometimes 30 churches partnered from across Canada with churches in Quebec. And over the years, we've come up with some best practices. So today I'd like us to talk about, how a church or an individual who can't necessarily come and be on site in Quebec or in French Canada can help out. So, maybe Paul, just start talking a bit about what your experience has been, some of the partnerships that you've seen as examples, and then maybe we can get into how it can be done today.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. I think in a nutshell, I'd like to say in my own words what a partnership, what I've seen, how what I've seen and what is good about it. Church-to-church partnership is a great way for a church in English Canada to partner with a French church in Quebec or French Canada to help them accomplish the mission of reaching new people. So really, it's a great tool for a local church somewhere in Canada to be assisting, helping a church in French Canada or in Quebec that needs help to do better their mission. So it translates into maybe helping with a youth worker. It translates into maybe a social media person. It translates into helping maybe with community presence or help in ministry in the community or towards children. And many times, like churches in Quebec are understaffed. And so to have that extra person to reach out and reach new people in their community makes a big difference for the efficiency of them reaching out people and doing the mission of the local church. So really, to love a church in Quebec, a local church in Quebec, is to do it through a partnership, church to church. So if you want to love Quebec, love a local church and help them accomplish the mission. That's basically in a nutshell how I see partnerships. So the biggest benefit I've seen through the years, one of the biggest outside of the mission, is many times a church in Quebec, especially if the worker is French speaking almost only, like we have churches outside of Montreal that are unilingual French and need a partnership with a church in English Canada, and their bubble, the bubble of that church is not Canada, it's Quebec, it's their local area. So they don't know they're part of a bigger picture of the local church, the body of Christ. So to connect with a church in Alberta, in British Columbia, in Ontario, anywhere in Canada, that partnership says, oh, we're part of a bigger church, we're part of a bigger family. And it just brings that to life through the years. And that a church in English Canada would love a church in Quebec and show love in helping them in their mission. The testimony to the people in the church, to the people in the community, it just resonates, the love of God in the body of Christ. So just to see that happening through the years has been a great joy for me. And also the accountability. The biggest result I've seen through it is the fact that a church is helping the other church through a relationship, basically, to do their mission with youth, with whatever endeavor they want to reach out to the community. Well, that church will report to the other church, not in an authoritative way, in a relationship time of, oh, how has our help helped you in the last year? And they report and they talk and they share. And then they can say, this has helped us to do this. It helped us to do that. And that way you see that result and that accountability for those dollars that are given through the partnership. So just for me to see that relationship from church to church is really a practical way to love Quebec and to love a church in Quebec is through a partnership.
Okay, here we go. Paul, I'm a pastor, I don't know, in central Canada. Let's just pick out Alberta. And I somehow or rather, I really feel a need to want to help with the missional need, even though there's many missional needs in Canada, with Quebec. So what would I do? What would be some of the steps that I would do to get in contact and to have a partnership?
Well, the first step is to establish initial contact. So any church that has an interest to have a church-to-church partnership would contact with you and you with me, or basically with me. So we're the two key people to make this happen with especially churches in Quebec. And as soon as there's that desire to that is expressed to have a church partnership, really it's to have that initial contact that I would have with the pastor in Alberta, in British Columbia, wherever, and just find out the profile of the English church that wants to partner with the church in Quebec. So basically, I need to know who is what kind of church wants to partner with the church in Quebec. And that way, it gives me a sense, because I've been in Quebec for so long, I know the profiles. We have many profiles of churches in Quebec. So it's just to have the right match. So the initial contact is important, to have a kind of basic interview, just saying, okay, what's the culture of the church? What are the missions, the strength of the church? And then that way, it helps me to find what kind of church could really be a good match. So there's a basic conversation about who is the church that wants to get in the process of a relationship with a Francophone church in Quebec.
And also that provides you a way of knowing, what do they want to help and do they want to financially? Is it prayerfully? Do they want to send a short-term missions team? So that helps you with an initial understanding of where they're at.
Exactly, and it helps me to narrow down what kind of profiles I can send back by knowing what type of help they want to give. So what kind of financial help, what kind of support for missions, leadership support, whatever. Is it for a cultural church? Is it for a rural church? Is it for an urban church? Is it for a multicultural church? To see where the profile can be well adjusted to where the church wants to help.
So when we've identified the church, the receiving church and the host church, and we think, it might be as fit, we have an initial Zoom call or interview. So talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so what we do is just before that, we have a church profile. So basically, usually what I'll do is if the church in Quebec doesn't have a profile, knowing that they could be a good match, we'll go through the step of asking these 2 or 3 local church in Quebec to give us a profile of their church, knowing a bit the partner church in Canada, what they look like. Then we can give them a church profile, and they can go in prayer and choose the church that they want to, inquire about, and looking at their church profile.
So, but there could also be just like that could be, even Northern Ontario or the Maritimes, and then maybe the communication would be with Luc Poirier in the Maritimes, or Tetreault in Ontario, wherever where there's a French community.
Yeah, exactly. So you're right. So for Quebec, it would be myself. You're the key for Canada. I would be the one for Quebec, and there would be someone for French Ontario and someone for French New Brunswick. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So once the match is done, once the church, the English church has chosen which one they want to choose, then we have a basic first interview with, if it's a church in Quebec, with myself and the English church and the French church. And sometimes there'll be translation because the pastor is unilingual French, but we'll provide translation there. And then we outline the expectations and the specific details of what it is to commit to a church-to-church partnership. So we'll talk about the commitment, what it looks like, and basically it's a test. It's for 1 year. It's a 1-year trial, and if it goes well, our goal is for it to become a long-term partnership relationship, and the long-term partnerships there's so many good testimonies of how much it brings even more to the church in Quebec. So, but sometimes it's just a 1 year, and it helps for 1 year, and sometimes it's a long term. So we talk about that. After 1 year, again, the district for Quebec, for myself, we will reevaluate after a year if each one wants to go on, how to adjust the partnership and to go on. So basically, that's what it happens is I'll be the matchmaker in a way, but it's the church that decides who they want to match with. But I provide the options, and then we make the initial meeting on the Zoom call together, and basically it starts from there.
Yeah, and that's great because our experience has been over the years, someone like yourself or who is, that you're in charge of, you pretty well know everything that's going on in the churches in Quebec, or maybe Luke in the Maritimes, or Gilles in Ontario, at least Western Ontario. You know the state of that church, and so, or your church planting strategies and vision for the future. So really, that connecting is very important to be with the district, and not to control, but at least to guide things along properly.
Yeah, and just to add on this, that it is my responsibility to make sure that the church that we will give as options from Quebec, that they are healthy churches, that they are able to move ahead in a partnership, and even if it's a rural church that is small, but they're healthy, they can grow in that type of relationship. So it is my responsibility as a leader in the district to make sure that these churches, they're good for a partnership.
Because we want healthy, growing churches, and maybe a church, what we say in here, le coup de pouce, the little help will just help them, make it to the next level in their growth and their health, and so that's fantastic. Not wanting to be too long today, but just giving the steps to go along the way. We have done church to church partnerships because we feel it's better than church to individuals. Just want to comment on that for a moment?
Yeah, basically, when we talk about church to church, that it is a church to church partnership, is that when it's a long-term relationship, pastors come and go, and so we've lived that through a few times in Quebec and also in English churches in Canada, where the leadership changes in one church or the other from Quebec or outside of Quebec, and when it's a church to church relationship, we expect the relationship to continue even if there's a new leadership, and that's the understanding of it. So that way, the relationship continues, and there's a strong commitment because leaders, maybe the main leader's gone, but other leaders in the church at the children's level, maybe at the missions level, maybe at the evangelism or leadership, there's still good communication between leaders that know each other through the years. Because I just want to bring this very important fact. A church-to-church relationship is really all about relationship. And it's really at the core of what is the success of a church partnership between two churches. So that's why it's a church to church. It goes on, and it brings better fruit on the long term. I remember one pastor I was talking to a few months ago. He was telling me that even though the other pastor of the former church, he resigned, he's now in retirement, and they still have a friendship. This is a pastor from BC and a pastor from Lac Saint-Jean in Quebec, French Quebec, very unilingual. And to have that friendship between two pastors 10, 15 years later, just on a private level, still be good friends and talking to each other and communicating with each other. This is one of the good fruits I saw. Wow, this is really good. So we're talking communication relationship really on the long term.
Yeah, and what I found too, Paul, is that some church who's partnering with the church in Quebec, it almost becomes like the church in Quebec becomes like a department of their church. They give the report in their annual business meeting. They'll have the pastor come out to their church, or the pastor will come here to Quebec, and it's really living. It's a really great experience if it's done the right way.
Exactly, and the first year is so much a key, like you mentioned, one of the key parts of that first year is to have an in-person relationship. So basically, we encourage, now with COVID for the last 2 years, it's been very difficult, but before that, basically what happened is it could be either way. It could be the pastor in English Canada coming to Quebec, visiting the local church in Quebec for a whole weekend, or it could be the pastor from the French church going to English Canada, visiting the church for a whole weekend and getting to know the leaders and everything. So there's a face-to-face, heart-to-heart communication. So just that first year is really key to really have a good match.
You know, Paul, you and I could talk an awful lot today about this because we've been involved in so many partnerships. We have so many great testimonies. And actually, near the end of this video today, we're going to go into an interview with one of those partnerships with Life Church in Edmonton and with the church in with Pastor Jean-Claude St-Amour in
Shawinigan.
And so we are going to have an interview there. That's all going to be in French, but we're going to have subtitles so that you know, Jean-Claude can tell how it's really helped him in his particular church. Listen, Paul, this has been great. Any last words before we go? Now, one thing we will do, we will be putting how to contact me and how to contact you, Paul, on this video, so somebody can do that. Any last words before we sign off?
Just what I said in the beginning, just the way to love Quebec and the mission field in Quebec is to love a local church by partnering with a local church. So if you want to show love to Quebec, to partner with a church in a local church in Quebec is the best way to show it, and it works.
Thanks for your time today, Paul.
Thank you, Gary.
Blessings, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Good day, everybody. Today, we're so glad to be with one of our French pastors in Quebec, Jean-Claude St-Amour. Hey, Jean-Claude, how are you?
Fine, very good. Hello, Pastor Gary.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm excellent, sir.
Good.
I'm just going to say, you know, friends, we're going to do this interview in English, the whole interview in English, eh, Jean-Claude?
Not good.
Oh. We're actually going to do it in French, and we're going to have this translated for you so you can listen to it. So let's go. Jean-Claude, un plaisir d'être avec toi aujourd'hui. Parle-nous un peu de toi, ta famille, où tu es pasteur.
Alors, ça me fait aussi plaisir d'être avec vous, Pasteur Gary, et de pouvoir saluer les gens. On est ici à Shawinigan. Depuis maintenant, ça va faire bientôt 12 ans. On est dans le service du Seigneur depuis plus de 30 ans maintenant. Je suis marié à une épouse, à une dame qui s'appelle Hélène, et on a 2 grands-enfants maintenant, dont un qui est marié. Alors, on est bien bénis à travers nos enfants, servent le Seigneur et aiment Dieu aussi de tout leur cœur, et c'est vraiment un privilège que de pouvoir servir Dieu là où on est.
Et tu joues bien le golf aussi.
Je me débrouille un peu. Je ne suis pas aussi meilleur que toi, Pasteur Gary, mais j'essaie.
Ah, non. Un jour. Pasteur Claude, Jean-Claude, aujourd'hui, la raison pourquoi on a la vidéo, c'est pour vraiment parler du partenariat que votre assemblée, que vous avez avec une assemblée dans l'ouest du Canada. Alors, peux-tu nous parler un peu de cela? C'est avec quelle assemblée? Et parle-nous un peu de comment ça a débuté. Et on va voir la progression de ça dans notre entrevue.
Excellent. Quel privilège d'être en partenariat avec une Église. Je pense que c'est vraiment une riche bénédiction pour notre Église et de notre attachement aussi à d'autres églises qui servent et qui sont là. Et nous, on est en partenariat depuis de nombreuses années, depuis maintenant plus de 15 ans, avec l'Église Life Church, qui sont une riche bénédiction pour nous. Lorsque moi, je suis arrivé ici à l'Église comme pasteur, l'Église était déjà en partenariat. Et lorsque moi, je suis arrivé, de voir cette église ici, le centre évangélique qui était en partenariat avec cette église-là, me donnait à moi plein de possibilités. Et je voyais vraiment aussi dans l'église à ce moment-là le soutien, l'engagement, la prière de cette Église pour notre Église. Et dans ces années qui ont été là, pour moi d'arriver et de pouvoir prendre place, pour moi, c'était comme quelque chose qui donnait de pouvoir avoir une fermeté, de comprendre tout le lien que l'Église ici pouvait avoir avec l'Église avec laquelle on est en partenariat. Lorsqu'ils ont commencé le partenariat, c'était un autre pasteur qui était ici, mais d'arriver dans une dimension comme celle-là, c'était une riche bénédiction. De savoir que d'un bout à l'autre du pays, il y a 2 églises qui sont dans un partenariat ensemble. Et moi, en tant que pasteur, de pouvoir comprendre ce lien-là, de voir ce lien-là, d'avoir un attachement avec l'Église avec laquelle on est en partenariat. Je sais qu'avant même que moi j'arrive, l'un des pasteurs de jeunesse qui était ici avait visité l'Église avec laquelle on est en partenariat. Eux avaient déjà aussi visité l'Église avec un groupe. Et ça nous a donné de voir de cet attachement-là de cœur à cœur avec l'Église, aussi dans le service du royaume de Dieu, et aussi d'apprécier et d'apprendre à travers ce qu'ils sont eux-mêmes.
Alors, c'est super. Parle-nous un peu pratico-pratique. Comment est-ce que ça se démontre dans l'Église, un partenariat comme cela? Comment ça vous a bénéficié comme une Église?
Alors, il y a plusieurs bénédictions qu'une Église dans un partenariat comme la nôtre va se développer et va pouvoir grandir et accomplir la mission par l'aide du partenariat. D'abord et avant tout, comme j'ai dit tantôt, de pouvoir avoir cet attachement-là de cœur. Nous, ici à l'Église, on va régulièrement, on va prier pour l'Église Life Church. On va prier pour l'équipe pastorale, on va prier pour l'Église, on va essayer de prendre du temps. Je vais même partager les dimanches matins qu'on est en partenariat et qu'on a la bénédiction de pouvoir être en partenariat. Au cours des années, il y a eu la possibilité de faire des choses ensemble. Je sais que l'Église sont celles qui nous ont soutenus aussi financièrement, de façon avec beaucoup de générosité pour notre Église ici. Et ça nous a donné la possibilité de pouvoir engager quelqu'un à mi-temps pour la jeunesse et de pouvoir de bénir aussi la jeunesse à l'intérieur de l'Église. Il y a aussi plein de possibilités, c'est-à-dire que moi, j'ai eu aussi le privilège de pouvoir visiter l'Église à ce moment-là avec lequel on était en partenariat. Et eux sont revenus, pendant que moi j'étais ici, une équipe est venue ici avec un des pasteurs qui était là et partagé, ont enseigné, on a fait de l'évangélisation ensemble, ils ont même travaillé à travers pour le bâtiment. Et on a même vu, et ça c'était une riche bénédiction, où la jeunesse de l'Église, là à Edmonton, se sont joints à nous pour faire une mission en Haïti au niveau de la jeunesse. Wow. Alors, les jeunes de l'Église là-bas sont venus ici pendant quelques jours à l'Église ici. Il y a une formation. L'Église a été là ensemble, c'est-à-dire on a pu bénéficier de la jeunesse qui était là, qui venait. Et après ça, les 2 jeunesses ont quitté et sont allés faire de la mission en Haïti. Et ça, wow. Ça a fait toute qu'une différence au niveau de notre Église.
Et tu sais, Jean-Claude, moi, je trouve ça, c'est intéressant. On n'y pense pas, mais les partenariats comme ça bénéficient l'Église qui envoie ou qui aide l'Église qui reçoit. Parce que, juste comme tu viens de dire, le fait d'être capable d'aller faire du ministère, ça leur encourage dans leur Église et ça leur permet d'encourager les autres dans leur Église d'être impliqués dans le ministère. Ça, c'est un excellent point, pasteur Jean-Claude.
Oui. Et ça fait vraiment une différence au sein de l'Église même pour nous. Ça le fait une grande différence parce que de voir, de prier, même si on prie, on mentionne et tout ça, mais de voir des gens, de voir ce partenariat-là, ça crée un lien de cœur avec les gens à l'intérieur de l'Église et ça nous aide à grandir pour nous.
Oui, et moi, parce qu'on est connectés ensemble, toi et moi, j'ai vu les courriels et les prières que vous avez faites l'un avec l'autre et je trouve que c'est super. Pour y penser, une quinzaine d'années, votre assemblée, c'est presque comme l'autre assemblée devient un département de votre Église et votre Église devient un département de leur Église. C'est fantastique, ça, oui.
Oui. Et j'aimerais dire ceci, bien sûr, on veut en tant que pasteur que l'Église puisse connaître une croissance et je pense que ce partenariat-là a été vraiment une aide pour nous à travers la croissance. Et ça, je l'ai dit à l'Église à plusieurs reprises dans lesquelles on voit la croissance autant en nombre que dans la vie des gens et tout ça. Et je pense que ce partenariat-là nous a vraiment aidés. Et en tant que pasteur, je vais parler un petit peu de cette dimension-là. Moi, en tant que pasteur, de voir la vision de ce partenariat-là, de cette Église pour nous, ça nous donne à nous de pouvoir mettre des choses en place et de retirer comme un exemple de cette Église-là, par exemple, de leur générosité, de leur cœur, de leur attachement à nous. Bien, c'est possible de pouvoir arriver à un comité d'administration puis de dire, voyez la générosité de cette Église-là, voyez leur cœur pour nous. Qu'est-ce que nous, on devrait avoir comme un cœur de générosité? Et comme pasteur, ça nous donne de pouvoir saisir l'opportunité de ce lien-là et de cet attachement-là pour le transposer dans notre Église pour nous-mêmes. Et il y a des choses que l'on a fait dans notre vision de la croissance qui a eu comme source le cœur du partenariat avec l'Église avec laquelle on est depuis de nombreuses années. Et ça, pour un pasteur, c'est toute qu'une bénédiction de pouvoir dire le dimanche matin, aujourd'hui, on va prier pour l'Église avec laquelle on est en partenariat, ou encore de pouvoir partager qu'eux prient pour nous. Même un dimanche matin, le pasteur m'avait envoyé un courriel disant qu'il pensait à nous pour le dimanche matin. J'ai dit ce dimanche matin-là à l'Église que le pasteur prierait pour nous ce dimanche matin-là particulier. Et c'est une riche et c'est une belle bénédiction pour le corps et pour l'Église.
Quelle belle histoire, Jean-Claude.
Oui.
Et, comment que nous espérons, avec ce temps qu'on passe avec le COVID, qu'on va être capable encore non seulement de se parler en Zoom ou de jaser ensemble, mais réellement d'être présents ensemble. Et hey, Jean-Claude, je veux te remercier d'avoir pris le temps aujourd'hui et de parler de ce partenariat-là. Et je trouve que ça va être un encouragement pour les églises d'être des hôtes, pour recevoir des partenaires, et aussi pour ceux qui veulent aider et devenir une église, d'être une église qui envoie. Alors, juste avant qu'on termine la vidéo, as-tu quelques dernières paroles, Jean-Claude, à dire?
En fait, juste encourager les églises dans ce partenariat-là et de saisir toute cette opportunité que nous avons de travailler ensemble, de servir ensemble dans le royaume de Dieu. Et comme j'ai dit tantôt, de savoir qu'à travers le Canada, il y a ce lien-là qu'on sert dans le royaume de Dieu. Et c'est une riche bénédiction, je pense, pour les deux églises que de pouvoir avoir ce lien-là ensemble. Et j'encourage les églises dans ce partenariat-là pour en découvrir toute la bénédiction et les bienfaits que ça peut amener, autant de celui qui donne, qui reçoit et d'un échange à travers ce partenariat-là, parce que ça doit être un échange.
Excellent. Quelques dernières paroles en anglais?
Thank you very much, Gary. God bless you.
Que le Seigneur te bénisse aussi. Merci, mon frère.
Merci, Pasteur Gary. Et Seigneur vous bénisse à tous ceux qui écouteront cette
Dieu
vidéo.
voulant, à bientôt.